Welcome to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, here to share some amazing conversations. We're talking business, health, making and saving money, or starting something epic. Think of this as your go-to spot for stories that do a lot more than just kill time. They spark ideas, give you a boost, and perhaps even change the way you look at the world. I'm pulling in the experts, the thinkers, the doers, and the dreamers. We're about to dive into stories that open doors and ideas that light up your brain. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Jane Barlow. How are you today, Jane?
I'm awesome. Desiree, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. I am so glad to hear that, and I am honored to have you on the show. I'm excited for our conversation today. And just to share a little bit about you, Jane, for the listeners, you are an author, you are a master herbalist, you are the founder of Barlow Herbal Specialties, which is really a company founded on sharing and offering herbal remedies and really knowledge, I think, to consumers. And so we're going to be talking about your book, and I love it. I am so enjoying this. Is Be Your Own Shaman. And I just really enjoyed reading through it, and the images inside here are stunning. But we're going to dive into that and into this topic about herbal remedies and being your own shaman. I think this is really kind of the core of our theme today. Jane, would you share with us how this journey began for you, what led you down this path, and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, that's a big old question. So I'm going to try to keep it so I don't take up the whole time with just that question. I was born second oldest of 14 kids, first of all. My dad was a medicinal botanist. So I was raised learning about plant medicine, using plant medicine. We didn't go to the doctor very often, only for emergencies. If someone broke their bone or one of my sisters had her appendix almost burst. But other than that, we had home remedies. My parents had a huge garden. There was herbs everywhere. And my dad actually was a very well-known medicinal herbal botanist. And what made him really tick was what made plants medicinal for human beings to keep us well. And he studied that for his whole life. So after he passed away, which was 27 years ago, I restarted his company because he had a company with some herbal remedies that he sold mostly to doctors. And I never dreamed it would be me that would be the one carrying on his work. I have 5 brothers and 8 sisters. And, it turned out that I was the one because no one else was really that interested. And I think part of it is when you grow up with a dad he was educationally trained. And so I'm just experience trained. So I grew up with a dad like this. I have all these years of experience. And it turns out that I geek out just like my dad did. It's just what makes a plant go after inflammation, go after pain, and go after diabetes, and go after different types of cancer. Like, there are powerful plants out there. About 24 years ago, I restarted his company, and I come by this because of my decades of experience just with my dad and my interest in it and watching people change the way they take care of themselves with plant medicine. And sometimes it's people who've been given up on by the medical industry because they've tried everything and they don't have anything else to try. They'll turn to natural remedies and their life changes. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. That's how I got where I'm at.
Oh, gosh. Well, thank you, Jane, for sharing that with us. And I can see how, growing up with your dad, sounds like amazing, and watching what he was doing, it really sounds like it kind of influenced you without really realizing it until later. But to carry that on is so fantastic. And so good on you for doing the work that you're doing. And I think it's so amazing that you are sharing this knowledge with others, because where do all medicines come from? They come from plants initially, right? That's what these pharmaceutical companies are kind of starting from.
Okay.
And so us as just regular people can discover how these things benefit us in their natural form, right?
Yeah, well, I think what we've kind of forgotten in the last 150 years is that this is how human beings have always been taking care of ourselves. And I think that we've lost our courage in using natural remedies because it's like, well, what if it doesn't work? What if I get an infection or my child gets an ear infection or something and I try something natural and it doesn't work. But here's the thing that people in the modern world need to realize. The majority of the human beings that still inhabit this planet turn to natural herbal remedies first. The majority of people, if you're in the Western world and you use a pharmaceutical or you cover up a symptom with a, even something like over the counter, you're turning to modern medicine, and that's actually not normal. Most of the planet still uses natural remedies first. And if you think about all these beautiful indigenous people and tribes, they have a medicine man who passes down the wisdom generation to generation. And there is deep cultural, beautiful history in learning what leaves will go after an infection if you make it into a poultice. It's really amazing. But yeah, almost every pharmaceutical has a plant-based start. Like white willow bark is aspirin. Like almost everyone at this point knows something like that, right?
Yeah. And so thank you for sharing this idea that we're this Western culture, we're kind of the anomaly in really being so reliant on the pharmaceuticals and not looking at the entire history of our planet has been about using the things in nature that help us. And we've just kind of ignored that because we have kind of lost that courage to use the things that our ancestors knew worked to help relieve these problems that we're having. And so that kind of leads me into a question like, how do we begin to trust ourselves and trust maybe the knowledge that other people are sharing about these products when, like you said, we're maybe scared that it's not going to work or it may make things worse? We just don't know. So what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think that that's the whole crux of it, really. I think been so many generations now that haven't used natural remedies in the Western world that we've completely lost touch with what is really powerful and helps us be well. I also think it can go back to look at the food that we eat and the things that we drink and the air that we breathe and the water we drink. Like what we put in is, I mean, we are biology. Our biology is going to express that. And then when we layer on a drug, something that's unnatural, because you can't patent Mother Nature. So that's a part of it. That's a part of the whole thing. When we are sick, we are valuable to the pharmaceutical industry. And I'm sure if you haven't heard that by now, you're living under a rock. I think everyone's probably heard that. The most empowering thing you can do is start taking care of yourself by what you eat, what you drink, how much you move, how much sunshine you get, how much do you disconnect from your technology? Because even that can make us sick because we might hear all these things or watch all these things, or we're just simply scrolling mindlessly. So the very first thing to do to gain your confidence is to start putting better things in your body, just with what you eat. And then start doing really simple things that give you confidence. Like one of my favorites is cayenne pepper. I talk about that all the time. And I'm a person who consumes cayenne pepper every day because I know what the benefits are, but I don't like hot, spicy foods. So I consume it in capsules, or I put a little bit of a tincture into my water in the morning. But cayenne pepper is a spice. It can't hurt you. It might burn your mouth for a minute, or it might, maybe make your stomach uncomfortable when you're first getting used to it. But this is a really easy way with some of these things that we consider and consume as foods to start gaining trust in plants and plant medicine. Just with what you eat, like basil, turmeric, rosemary, some of these spices that we're just familiar with, most people don't realize the medicinal power that lives in them. So that is the perfect place to start, is with fresh spices. Because if you have spices that are in your cupboard and maybe they've been there for a year, a couple of years, my neighbor cleared out her spice cupboard the other day. She had stuff that was in there 13 years. And they might flavor your food a little bit, but there's not going to be very much medicinal benefits as far as antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties and all the different things that spices have. So getting them fresh is usually the best way. But this is the easiest place to start and start gaining confidence, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's what are we putting into our bodies to start with? It's absolutely going to have an effect on our overall well-being and health and fitness and all of that, right?
Yeah.
But there's oh my gosh, a famous quote, and I can't think of who it was originally said, but it's food is medicine. And perhaps you know who it is.
Is that Hippocrates? Let medicine be thy food,
Yes.
or let food be
Uh,
thy medicine. Hippocrates, that's
exactly.
very famous. It might not be exact now, but Hippocrates, the father of natural medicine.
And so that's the thing that we've forgotten is how the food that we eat is really affecting us in so many ways that we're just, yeah, it's so fascinating to me.
It's the easiest thing to say and the hardest thing to do, right? Because you can say all day long, you need to eat better, you need to eat clean, you need to eat, fresh and organic and stay away from junk food and fast food. And it's the easiest thing to say, but our food is designed to addict us, and it has done a very good job at that. It's made it cheap and fast and easy to get, and it addicts us. So it's, yeah, we could say that all day long, but then take the action and start making the changes.
And start small,
Yeah.
right? Start small. It sounds like just begin trying different things that you can add in that are healthy, that are fresh, and, go from there and begin to make those little incremental changes. But yeah, I agree with you about the food industry. So another thing, it's the pharmaceutical industry, the food industry, it's designed to, get us addicted to things so that it's just making more money. But that's a topic for another day.
And I think the way that they'll change is when we start opting out of them. When we start opting out of consuming things, they'll change. So, and I believe that's happening. I see it on a scale where that's happening every day. So people need to be hopeful about that. You do make a difference when you vote with your dollars. When you consume and you purchase other things that are good for you, you're making a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Great point. Thank you for sharing that, Jane.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Okay. So can we talk about how, going back to kind of your dad and how he started this for you and your family, and really growing up with someone who was like that, how did that influence you and change the way that you lived your life, not just as a child, but even now as an adult?
Yeah, well, the best thing my dad did, I think, for all of us was show an example. He was never preachy. He was never like, you have to eat this way. You have to do this if you're going to be healthy. It was just, he just had this base knowledge. He had this quiet presence, and he was sought over from all around the world because of the people he worked with and the things that he did. And he wrote a book when I was in high school called From the Shepherd's Purse, and it was medicinal botany. And this is what I kind of based mine on. But basically, what happened is we all grew up this way with all this, homemade food, made our own bread, big gardens, all of that natural medicine. And then we grew up, we got married, we had started having our own families, we got influenced by the people that we married. And almost all of us fell off the wagon, like the natural wagon, because we could eat whatever we wanted. We could drink whatever we wanted. We didn't have to use herbs if we wanted to, take an ibuprofen. And I did the same all during my 20s. I was like, oh, this is, what have I been missing? I've been missing McDonald's all these years. I never got to go. So during my 20s, I experienced some constipation. I had some inflammation. I didn't ever get anything bad or dire or any big disease, but I had some issues where I wasn't feeling good. And when I was about a little over 30, I started realizing I don't feel good. And almost all my siblings and I kind of went through that when we went out on our own. You always fight against what your parents teach you and train you to do, and you've got to go experience it for yourself. And to my parents' credit, they never once, ever once, as they watched us struggle as adults, say, well, you need to stop doing that and you need to do this, like what we taught you. Never once. And I look back on that as a mother myself. My kids are in their 40s now, and I have grandkids too. And I have found myself being preachy to my kids, like, I taught you better than that. And, I have to sometimes remind myself, what did my parents do, especially my dad? He never once made me feel like I was being judged. I got to learn these things on my own. And I would say that's a lot more powerful than someone being preachy at you. It's someone just setting a pure example and just smiling as you make your mistakes and letting you carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Jane. Oh my gosh. It's so, so true. I think about my own, years growing up and then becoming a mother myself, and this idea of just setting a good example. We really hope that what we're doing is getting through to our kids, and we will only know that by letting them do what they're going to do, right? And then see what happens.
Yeah, and I think realizing that they're their own person, as much as we want them to do what we say and do what we do and like follow our example. At the end of the day, they have their own journey. And that to me is the hardest thing. And I think that goes with anybody in your life, even not just your kids. You know, I realized that with my grandkids. One's 11 and one's 13. And I so badly want to, you know, just drop knowledge. And I do that here and there, but I really do it the way my dad taught me, where I'm just a pure example because I wasn't that way with my boys. I was a little more preachy than I would have liked to have been.
But that was the experience that you needed to
Yeah,
have as well,
I know.
right?
I
Yeah.
know. Darn it.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. Well, so let's talk now about how when you decided that you wanted to write this book, and it's again, Be Your Own Shaman. And I just, again, I love it. It's just so fantastic. First of all, the images are amazing and the information is so detailed in here. So, what was it that inspired you to do it? And tell us kind of how it was for you in the writing process. What did you discover?
Yeah. So, like I said, my dad wrote a book when I was in high school, and it was called From the Shepherd's Purse. It had 48 plants in it. And it was a little bit of the same layout as in Be Your Own Shaman. But after he passed away and I restarted his company, not only did his business die with it, but his book, he self-published his book. So his book was out of print. And over these last couple decades, as I've been going with my company, I had people almost every day at a certain point that were like, you need to bring your dad's book back. You need to republish your dad's book. We need your dad's book back in print. And you can even still get his book on Amazon. It's kind of like a collector's edition. But I kept putting it off and putting it off. And, you know, all my siblings were like, yeah, if you want to publish dad's book, go for it. And of course, we support you. It never felt right just to republish my dad's original work. So what I did is I took his 48 plants and I reformatted the information. I redid the pictures. All of the illustrations are new. They were actually done by one of my sisters, all the plant illustrations and other illustrations in the book. And then I doubled the content. So I added more plants to it because it needed to be something that was updated and new and had more content to it. But the main goal, so it's really like a love letter to my dad and his beautiful legacy, because he was such an inspiring, way ahead of his time soul, mostly in the modern era, because you look at all these other medicine men and other cultures and they're still doing all this. But my dad in the modern world saw things that were wrong with the systems and was like, you know, just out there making a difference. So this is kind of like, if you notice in the front, there's a foreword I wrote that was kind of just honoring his legacy. But then I think the second goal was I wanted to empower people to the power of plant medicine and that it's not that hard. So there's simple information. Every plant has a beautiful full color picture. It tells you what part of the plant to use, where it grows, and then what it's good for and how to make it. How do you make it into a tea? How do you make it into a poultice? What is a poultice? You know, a poultice is something you put on a wound or something. So I think my biggest goal was like, let's show people that plant medicine is not intimidating. You know, I don't want to give you a big thick book with all these scientific facts and something that was like, okay, well, I can't even read this. I want the everyday mom, everyday dad, everyday person to go, oh, wow, okay. This plant, I know this plant. My neighbor gives it to me or has it. I have it in my garden and it does all these things. And it's so good for me. So that was the whole point of bringing a book out like this.
That's beautiful. And a way to honor your father and the
Yeah.
work that he did
Yeah.
and bring it up to, you know, today and for our understanding and really so that we can access it in a way that's easy to understand. And so that's a beautiful thing. And I am so enjoying it, really. You're absolutely
Okay.
right. I mean, like the images are beautiful. It's the information is so accessible. Like I really can understand what this thing does, you know, this particular plant does and why we would want to take it. Yeah, great job,
Thank
honestly.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And I grew up, you know, in the 70s and my mom was a little bit of a hippie and, you know, she would really try to go the kind of like herbal remedy, home remedy kind of thing. So I am familiar with quite a bit of it just because of that experience. But yeah, again, going back to we have to kind of live our own life. And I did that sort of thing where I was trying all the easy ways to solve the problem, right? But it doesn't always work. So anyway, All right. So let's talk a little bit about what are your favorite herbs to have on hand? It's things that everybody can easily get that are good to have that you would recommend.
So I mentioned earlier cayenne pepper. This is one thing I think everybody should have, and not just to consume on a regular basis, but to have it in an emergency situation. And I'll tell you why. So cayenne pepper does a ton of things. One of the most important things is it's really good for your heart and your vascular system. So it's really good for heart health. If you think about what takes human beings down, usually an infection, a heart attack, something that will affect our heart. And then you might say something that affects your brain or your nervous system. But your heart, there are so many people that have heart disease and heart issues and vascular problems. But on a basic scale, cayenne pepper does a ton of things. It's good for your digestion. It's good for your metabolism. It's got a ton of antioxidant properties. So it's really good for cancer prevention. And one of the things that's really powerful, and this happened when I was 14, is I watched my dad stop a heart attack with cayenne pepper. So cayenne pepper, like I said, is a vasodilator. It's really good for your veins, and it helps to keep plaque out of your veins. But my dad used to carry a wad of cash in his left breast pocket and a little bottle of cayenne pepper tincture in his pants pocket. That was just always what my dad had on him. And no one really, I mean, we knew what the money, well, obviously the money is for the stuff, but the cayenne pepper was just my dad's quirk. So I grew up in Idaho. And when you're 14, you can get your daytime driver's license in Idaho because there's a lot of farmers there. So even though we weren't farmers, we had a big acreage and we lived out in rural Idaho. So my dad took me out on my birthday to have a driving lesson. And so we're out on these rural roads. We stopped to get gas. And this was before you could just put a credit card in. You had to go into the gas station to pay. So we walked in to pay, and there was an older couple standing at the cash register up in front of us. Right as we stepped up, this guy, the older man, clutched his heart, total classically, and fell to the ground. And my dad, within a few seconds, had 2 droppers full of cayenne pepper down this guy's throat. And I mean, I'm this 14-year-old girl watching this. And to me, I saw a lot of things my dad did. And so this didn't really have a huge impact. It had an impact, but it wasn't like, I couldn't wait to tell my friends at school what just happened. This was there were normal everyday occurrences of miraculous things I watched my dad do. But basically within about 60 seconds, this man was sputtering and coughing, and the ambulance had been called. And it took about 30 minutes for the ambulance to get there. And the guy went away in the ambulance and he was just fine. His wife called later and said, "Hey, thank you so much." And so I believe, and please know that I'm not a doctor, and none of this is medical advice. This is my own experience and my own opinion. But I believe that cayenne pepper belongs in everyone's household. Even if you get a teaspoon of cayenne pepper powder, stir it into a glass of water and consume it that way, same benefits. So what I love about a tincture is you can extract the most powerful properties out of a plant when it's fresh and it's preserved because you're doing it in an alcohol base. That, to me, that's the number one thing, is that everyone can have cayenne pepper. And I also believe you should have something for infections. Like my favorite is a plant called lomatium. It's in my book. It's in your Own Shaman book. That one is a little bit tougher to get as far as to go out and get it, but also olive leaf extract, elderberry, oil of oregano, things like that have antimicrobial properties, things that will go after a virus that might come at us. And I think those are probably 2 of your most important. But then having things like turmeric is good, lemon balm and elderberry. Yeah, I think I could obviously talk for a really long time. Desiree, you're like, okay, I'm discovering that.
Yeah, no, this is perfect. This is exactly the point of our
Yeah.
conversation is to share the knowledge that you have with the listeners, with myself, and truly it's fantastic. And yes, we have to kind of do a little bit of a caveat there, like we're
Yeah.
not medical professionals, we're not doctors. Obviously be aware that these are home remedies, and if there is an emergency, you need to be contacting emergency services and get
Yes.
yourself to a hospital.
Yeah.
But, thank you for sharing that story of your father with that gentleman. And wow, I mean, really, what a difference that made. So it's so interesting to me that we can just take this, like you shared, in water
Yeah.
daily. And this helps our vascular system with the blood flow. So that's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, cayenne has some natural blood thinning properties. And if you don't like cayenne pepper, which I'm not a fan of hot things, like I said, so I take cayenne pepper in capsules because I want it in my diet every single day. And I do have a tincture that I'll squeeze up like 15, 20 drops, and I'll put it into my first glass of water in the morning. And it's usually a quart jar. So I add a little bit of apple cider vinegar, a little bit of fresh squeezed lemon, and a dropper of cayenne pepper tincture. So when you add it to a full glass of water and then consume it, you might feel a little bit of heat, but if you're sensitive to hot, spicy things, take it in capsule or dilute it in a big full glass of water. And it will do amazing things for your health, just overall. Yeah.
And you mentioned in there apple cider vinegar, and you talked about turmeric briefly before.
Yeah.
And so these are things I think we're hearing a lot about their benefit to us. And another one that's become really popular is curcumin. I'm not sure if I'm saying that.
Curcumin.
Curcumin, yes.
Okay, so curcumin is an alkaloid in turmeric. So think about it this way. If you've heard of beta carotene, right? So a carrot has over 200 different beta carotenes in it. But what happens is some of the companies, supplement companies, will isolate out maybe one of the most powerful beta carotenes, and they'll put it into a supplement and say, this is the most powerful way to get beta carotene. Don't eat the carrots, take this beta carotene. So you can look at curcumin the same way. Curcumin is a very powerful part of turmeric. So it's the same thing. But what people don't realize is you need the whole. You need the whole. So instead of you should eat carrots or get a whole supplement of a whole carrot. Same with curcumin and turmeric. You should have the full turmeric root. If you're going to take a supplement, I wouldn't take an isolate because they're isolating out the curcumin. And I'm not saying it won't do any good to take curcumin. It certainly could. But from my experience and my research and my collaboration with other, not just herbalists, but many naturopathic doctors and even some medical doctors over the years, the whole is better than just the part. It's actually more important to have the whole.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to what we're eating.
Yeah.
And the carrot itself is really, I mean, you're getting everything there, right? You're getting
fiber.
Yes, exactly. All the vitamins, all the minerals, the fiber, all of that, all the nutrients, and you're filling yourself up.
Yeah.
So
you're getting it's like eating an orange instead of having orange juice. It's so much better for you to have an orange than the orange juice, even though, the juice is probably a better option than soda.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And again, this kind of goes back to our point of the conversation when we were talking about the time that it takes. And so it's easier to have orange juice because it's already squeezed for you, ready to go. The point of eating the orange is also the fiber you're getting from the pieces in there, but it's time consuming. And so with the way that we are all today very busy and like many things going on, but how can we kind of fit this back into our daily habits? Because it's so important for us on so many levels.
I think we just need to slow down. It's like cooking your own meals. I think it's just habit. We get in these habits. And I think some of us will scroll through Instagram for an hour or watch YouTube videos for a couple of hours, but you won't take the time to peel an orange. So I think it has to be, I'm going to swap my habits. And again, it's just, start to swap them out slowly if that works for you. But I think we make time for the things that are important for us. If it's important for us to eat an orange instead of just drink orange juice, then we'll take the time to peel an orange. It doesn't take long to peel an orange. If we really think about it, we spend all this time distracted by things that don't serve us or make us a better human or a better mother or a better parent or dad or whatever. Yeah, I think more people just need to start cooking at home. And I know it's easy to say, oh, we're busy in my job. And we can have excuses until the cows come home. And we just need to make a decision because we'll make time for the things that are important to us. We always do.
Yeah, Jane, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you. And that applies in every area of our life. If it's important to us, we will make time for it. Find a way or make a way. And, if it's not, then we'll make excuses. So
always.
Yeah.
It's the modern human way. I read this thing where it said, and it uses man, but this could be for men and women. Hard times make strong men. Strong men make make times better. Better times make weak men, and weak men make hard times. So it's like this cycle that we go through as humanity. And I think that we're kind of at the end of the cycle where it's like things have gotten so easy and so convenient for us that we aren't strong and resilient in some of the places that make us strong because everything has been too easy. So I think we are at the end of a cycle. You know, if you really look at the world, it's easy to maybe have a doomsday look on it, but I prefer to have, we are in such exciting times that people are starting to come back to, oh, how do I take care of myself using a plant that grows in my yard? Like that is so exciting to me because that's how we thrive, right?
Yeah. That's a really great way to think about it too. I think
Yeah.
an interesting, if you stop to think about what you just shared, it's a really good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would love to have you share if you want to take a moment and talk with us a little bit about your YouTube channel that you have. And I know you share some videos weekly. If you want to share with the listeners what they might find if they were to check that out, or viewers who are watching this on YouTube.
Yeah. So I just kind of started sharing information about 10 years ago on YouTube just because it was a great platform. And I do love technology. I love, having access to so much information and being able to share it. Like technology just makes sense. Like a lot of it makes sense to me. So I just thought, I'll just get on YouTube. So what this has really morphed to is I drop a herbal wisdom video every Thursday. So I just spotlight a plant. I talk about the medicinal properties. I talk about where it grows, if you can grow it in your flower garden, your herb garden, what parts of the plant do you use, and how do you make it or use it if some of them are culinary, like this morning, the one I dropped was on sheep sorrel. And it's a common weed. It grows everywhere, but five-star Michelin chefs love sheep sorrel because the leaves they taste a little lemony. They add this really beautiful lemony sip to them. But sheep sorrel also has anti-cancer properties. It's good for detoxification. It cleanses your blood. So what I like to do is just share with people every week a new herb that just kind of helps them realize, oh, there's so many things that are just outside my door I might not realize. And then about a little more than 3 years ago, I started doing a Sunday message of love because I was kind of having 2020 was a year of angst for a lot of people. And I think with the world shutting down and all the fear and all of the polarization about what people were believing and how they were seeing the world and all the stuff that was happening, I just kind of for my own self-preservation was like, I need to start spreading love and high frequency. I need to start helping to raise the consciousness of the planet the best that I can. So I just started, because I'm a journaler, so I journal every day. And so I just started sharing some of my journaling. And I just did my first Sunday message of love, like I said, about 3 years ago. And I've just never skipped a Sunday since. So every Sunday I share a Sunday message of love and I just drop it on YouTube. It's kind of morphed into a fun little group of people that tune in and are like, oh, you understand exactly how I'm feeling today. And yeah, so it's a kind of a mix of like share some herbal wisdom and how can we make a difference in the world? We raise the consciousness. That's how things and humanity is going to get better and stronger.
Mhm. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for doing that. I agree with you. It is so important that we raise that positivity, that we are working together to spread the positivity and the love. I think that's going to make a difference for the entire planet. But
Yeah.
it takes each of us to be doing that to make a difference. I mean, one little drop in the bucket or the lake or
Yeah.
the ocean spreads. So it just does start with
Totally.
us.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think people realize if you do research on consciousness. Have you heard of Dr. David Hawkins?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he figured the scale of consciousness from 0 to 1,000, and they can measure where the collective of humanity is. And when you reach 200, you're at courage. And it doesn't take everyone. I don't know what the number is. It's like one person can affect 10,000 people. It might even be more than that. So it doesn't take everybody raising their consciousness. So one person vibrating at a higher level, even if it means eating clean so that your body can vibrate at a more healthy level, that makes a difference for the collective. And we might go, oh, well, I'm just one little person. I can't make a difference. No, you are a powerful person who can make a huge difference, even if it's just in your own family and community. What you radiate out makes a massive difference. Massive.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Again, it's beautiful. Okay, Jane. So let me see where I want to go now. Is there something that you haven't shared to this point that you think the person who's listening really needs to know? What would you like to share?
Oh my goodness, you just opened up a whole, where do I want to go with this? Let me think. Well, I think I could just share a little bit in what I just said before, but I, from a lot of the feedback that I get from people, I think that a lot of people feel sometimes a little bit of despair. And with, think about what's happening in the world. Look at the fires in LA. I have 4 of my siblings live down there and they're all okay, but there's a lot of people who aren't okay. And there's a lot of things that are happening in the world that maybe some people don't see that. And I think there's maybe a little bit of head in the sand. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that's probably self-preservation. I think if people realize their potential and they need to take care of this physical vessel, we are divine sparks of consciousness at the core of who we are. It doesn't matter what religion you believe in, but we are a pure divine spark of consciousness. But this is our temple. This is our vehicle to take us through this earthly life. And if we are unhealthy and we cannot function and we are depressed and we're feeling sick, we can't accomplish what we're here to accomplish. If you're in despair about all the stuff that's happening, how can you help? How can you be of service to people if your physical vessel doesn't work? Whoever is listening to this, that feels maybe things are just way too tough, or maybe you don't feel that way. Regardless of where you are, I think that if you up your game in how you take care of your body, it will change everything. Any type of depression, maybe you're not depressed, but maybe you just want to up your physical fitness game. For 20 years before I started my dad's company, I was in the fitness industry. I owned my own health club. I taught fitness classes, and I know firsthand how that feels to be physically fit no matter what age you are. And I think that it's so empowering to be able to, I live in Utah. There's huge mountains everywhere. I'm a hiker and I'm in my 60s, but I can get to the top of some of the highest mountains here. And the exhilaration that you feel like I'm a living, breathing human being and I am alive. And when you go outside and you experience Mother Nature and you do something that's physically challenging, there's no way to describe it until you experience that. And if anyone listening to this has not experienced Mother Nature, even in a small way like that, this is what I would encourage you to get out and do, is get out and experience Mother Nature so that you can go, yes, I am alive. And we forget that. We suck into our technology and we're like, we forget.
Well, you know what? I think it was important to be said. So thank you. And again, it comes back to we've got to be feeding ourselves the things that help us be healthy, be the best that we can be, so that we feel physically capable of exercising, of getting out and into nature. If we can't take those hikes on the huge mountains, at least we're taking walks around our neighborhood and just enjoying the beauty that really is around us if we just stop and look for it.
100%. Walk outside to your local park. Walk around your block,
Yes, I agree. Oh my gosh. So Jane, would you tell us, because I always love to have my guests share if there's books that they think have been helpful or beneficial, or if there's podcasts that you want to share with the listeners, what would you like to share with us today?
So I'm just finishing reading a book called Pivot by a woman named Michelle Small Wright. I was just introduced to her. It's a memoir and she's still alive. I think she's almost 80. That one was very good. She talks to the plants. Mother Nature talks to her. It's a total beautiful memoir that I'm just wrapping up. Last year, I finished the Ringing Cedars, the Anastasia. There's 8 volumes. They're not new. That is a really beautiful book, a series of books that talks about regenerative farming and taking care of the land and how the land in turn takes care of the humans. So the Ringing Cedar series is 8 or 9 volumes, and they're little skinny books. those are probably the books that have most resonated with me. I did just finish reading the trilogy of David Icke's books. He is a gentleman from the UK, and his last 3 books were The Trap, The Dream, and The Reveal. Those were amazing, amazing books. I just read those at the end of last year too. Yeah, those are mind-opening books. Have you ever heard of David Icke?
No, I have not.
Yeah,
No.
you open your mind if you read David Icke. His last name is spelled Icke, and he's written like 23 books, and he's a gentleman in the UK who's in his 70s, and I've been following him for a long time, but I just read his last 3 books just back to back in December. So yeah, those I kind of tend to like nonfiction more than I like fiction.
Yeah, those sound fantastic. So thank you for those recommendations.
Yeah.
And I'll detail them in the show notes so people
Okay,
can find
perfect.
them. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any podcasts that you would like to suggest the listeners check out?
Well, I love Greg Braden. He's one of my favorite to follow. Bruce Lipton, I actually got to meet him in person. I also tune into his channel. There's a channel called Next Level Soul on YouTube that I tune into, and he drops content on a regular basis. And sometimes I'll dip into Joe Rogan and Tucker and all the people who, they seem to have these huge platforms, and I don't listen to everything that they put out, but if there's a guest that piques my interest, I might listen to, because I have a 5-mile walk in my neighborhood that I will walk on, and I will put on something that, if you open up a 3-hour podcast, it's like, when am I going to have time to listen to this? So if I have a long walk or something I'm multitasking, I'll put on that. But there's also a really beautiful channel called The Inspired Channel that I like to tune into as well.
Oh, excellent. Well, again,
Yeah.
thank you for those recommendations.
Yeah.
I will share those as well. And then tell us, Jane, how we can find your book. I've got my copy. How can the listeners find this book?
Yeah, it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So it got picked up by a publisher, which was just a brilliant, such an honor, because I self-published it in 23, and then it got picked up last year by a publisher. So you can find it on all the platforms. I know, I was blown away. So that's my self-published book. And when it was picked up by a publisher, I added another chapter. So there's 101 plants, but the chapter I added is psychedelics and sacred plants. There's 7 more plants. That's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. But if you want the one that's self-published, they look exactly the same. One just has an extra chapter. But you can go to my website and get the one that I sent you, which is just on my barlowherbal.com website.
Perfect. Well, I will detail the information in the show notes so the listeners can find it either on Amazon or through your website. I will put that in there. And then is there any social media? We talked about your YouTube channel. Is there anywhere else that the listeners can follow along with the work you're doing? Or if they have questions they want to ask you, how would they best do that?
Yeah, so you can jump over to my website, which is barlowherbal.com, and you can go contact us and ask a question right through our customer service. Super easy. And we're tiny. We're a tiny family company. We do our own fulfillment. We answer our own phones. So we're really easy to reach because we know people don't want to just get a bot or a person in a call center when you're having questions about things like this. And we're on Instagram and Facebook, not active very much on Facebook, but we have a little Instagram page that we just kind of share stuff. And it is, like I was telling you before we recorded, it's a little hard to share some of the stuff that I do because I can't make claims. I've had YouTube take some of my videos down, and it's like, oh, okay. We're really super easy to find and really easy to contact.
Excellent. And thank you for sharing that with us. Jane, this has been so interesting, and I appreciate your time and your knowledge and sharing that with us. It's been lovely having you on the show. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Desiree. You're so lovely. I'm so lucky I get to share my message, but there's these rare gems of podcast hosts that are just like so sparkly. And you are just one of those rare people. So thank you for the lovely conversation and letting me share what I do. And I just have excitement for the future. And I love that people are starting to say, hey, maybe I should look at a natural remedy over something that's not natural. So I love the direction the world is going in.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you again, and we'll talk more soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.